Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. We're going to start things off with our good friends from the Family Resource Center, part of our continued partnership. And this time, we're going to talk about rethinking parenting. 1 o'clock, we'll have a quick chat with our friends over at the Civil Service Association. And then 1:30, political candidate Christina Hislop Rowlandson will join us. So we invite you to be a part of it. But first, let's go to the phones. We still can practice that whole notion of leveraging the technology to ensure that we have the greatest access to all. Hey, good afternoon. How are you today?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm very well. How are you?
Great, great. You know what? I think of you and your colleagues, and I look at the untiring efforts on your behalf, on our behalf, that you guys do continually to empower and uplift our community and to strengthen our families. So it's really, really encouraging to see that stalwart effort. So thanks so much to you and your team.
And we always appreciate your support.
All right. Well, Albert came out here, and we're glad to do it. And for our listeners, could we, in the studio, it would be easier to say, but here's my hair. But would you see? You let me laugh so easily. All right, share with us maybe a brief intro and talk about the program and all the good things that are happening over at FRC.
Absolutely. So my name is Maher Lamba. I am a program facilitator with the Family Resource Center. A lot of our programs are relating to parenting services, but what I'm here to talk about today is the closing of our Honoring Women Month campaign. So all month we have been raising awareness about issues related to gender and honoring women, and so that's what we want to talk about today, because even though the month is ending, that conversation does not end.
No, man. I think it just sets the stage for us to realize how important it is to continue that conversation, both within our homes and our schools and our private spaces, but that public dialogue to respect the importance of that contribution. I guess the more we become comfortable with something, was it a friendship or faith, the more we may be able to champion it, but also ourselves, be responsive in a very positive, productive manner. From your perspective, though, as we look at this month and the activities that went on, it's great that we devoted a month to it, but as you said, it should be every day, every hour, all day long.
Absolutely, and this year's theme for International Women's Day was Choose to Challenge, and I think that really resonates with the conversation is not over, because what that means is that we are all responsible for our own thoughts and actions, and we all have to choose to challenge not just one another, not just society, but also ourselves every day about how we approach one another and how we can create a more inclusive world for everyone around us, and how we can create a more inclusive community here in Cayman. And part of that also comes with celebrating the achievements of the people in our community.
When I look at the different themes, I think this year's theme perhaps resonates because we saw what last year being the longest century ever. Many of us, I still laugh at that. It's just, but it's a notion that we need to challenge perhaps our own preconceived notions or misconceptions or perceptions, but equally challenge ourselves to improve, to perhaps maybe look at ways in which we've always acted and conducted ourselves, and wonder to what extent that is positive and inclusive and encouraging and nurturing. What are some of the things that have transpired perhaps this month that you could share with us that may be not just a resounding consequence of us choosing to challenge, but maybe position us to go forward to realize that this should not be anything but the norm in terms of our approach for being respectful, teach and to recognizing the contributions and the value of our mothers and daughters and sisters and all the women in our society.
Yeah, and a big part of that is that the conversation around honoring Women Month and celebrating women and working towards gender equality is not just women's issue, it's a whole community issue. It's an issue that everyone should be a part of, and everyone should be a part of that conversation. And one of the ways that we did that this month is we actually started the month with the youth debate competition. So Conyers every year hosts the Interschools Debate Tournament, and this year the topics were related to gender equality. So the older students spoke about whether or not gender equality will be achieved in our lifetime, and the younger students spoke to whether or not mothers and wives should be paid for domestic work. And so you had youth debating these very pertinent topics and sharing their opinions and also research-based opinions on gender issues and what they think. And it was really a privilege to be able to go and speak to our youth about these topics and to hear their opinions, because they have very valid opinions and they are very understanding of the challenges that come with that topic, and they are also experiencing some of those challenges.
And that's just it. I'm glad you said that last part, because that's, as you started, I'm thinking that not only are they going to be the ones, the youth of today, but they will be impacted by that same sort of almost systemic bias, if I could put it that way, if it continues. But they're seeing it now as teenagers, adolescents, as young, individuals sort of entering adulthood, as it were, off to university or in the workforce. And something their parents and grandparents may have experienced, may even have verbalized, but they're responding to it. If we could, though, maybe ask you just briefly on the debate, the idea of notion that, will gender equality be achieved, within our lifetimes? What was for those who missed the debate, what was the sort of the outcome, the perspective from them?
Yeah, and I think, it makes it a very good debate topic because you can argue both sides of it. You can see in some ways how much as a world, really, we are working towards gender equality in many places, including in Cayman. Locally, we are taking strides and working towards gender equality. But there's actually been a gender gap report from the World Economic Forum that was done in 2020, and it actually spoke to, on average, so not in total, but on average, it will take 99.5 years for gender equality to be achieved. So, a lot of the students spoke to the limitations there, and what that really came down to was we're making huge strides in education, for example, and we have achieved gender equality in education in many countries around the world, and women and girls have access to education opportunities that were not available to them before. But where we're missing that is in the workforce. And so the education opportunities that they've had are not translating to the workforce. It's not translating into their salaries, into their positions, into the jobs that they hold. And with that in translation, it's also not translating into their opportunity to participate in our economy at an equal level.
When you think about it, 100 years and 99.5 years from that last report last year by the WEF. But think of it, that's 200 years or 300 years or even more prior to that as well, when the value of the sexes is unequal, when the contributions of, we can go back to the second part of it relative to the worth and value of the wives and the mothers in the homes. But why so long? Is it a lack of political will? Is it a lack of sensitivity on our parts of society? What was the consensus, if any?
I think a lot of it comes down to, we have a very strong perception about gender equality based on where we live. And we know that as a society, it's something that we talk about here in Cayman. We know that it's something that the countries around us or the countries that influence us, they talk about it. But there are still many countries where women can't open bank accounts. There are still many countries where they're not having that conversation, and they're not. So when you're speaking about global gender equality, there are many countries that have much bigger strides to take than others.
And I think too, when we look at some places, we may somehow assume that because they're an industrialized nation or in a Western world or so on, or great economic and political power, that there is equality. And we may, again, perhaps believe that just because it's those countries that we label as developing nations or third world or something, that it's only them. But we can see it even in the Cayman context, that we have that sort of unequal approach to pay, to opportunity, to respect, to promotion, and the like. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think with that, no country in the world has achieved gender equality. And I think one of the things that we're reading about from the UN and such places now is that countries that think that they've achieved gender equality are almost more dangerous, because then they stop working towards it. And there's no country in the world that has achieved gender equality. And the four main criteria that they look at is health, access to healthcare, education, workforce and economic opportunity, and political life. And no country in the world has achieved gender equality in all four of those categories. And that includes us here in Cayman. And with that, I also want to say that the Gender Equality Cayman group right now is doing a gender equality in the workforce survey that everyone can still participate in. There's 1 week left for the survey. You can find it on their website and on their Facebook page. That's Gender Equality Cayman. But that would help give us an understanding of where we're at least in the workforce locally here right now. It would help to give us some data and help to understand our local context in the context of the world.
As we go into the break, would you, not just for emphasis, but make sure that I didn't write them down incorrectly, those 4 areas, repeat them for us again, where we have no country has yet achieved equality. Would you repeat those for me?
Yeah, so that's healthcare, education, workforce and economic opportunity, and political life.
And of course, so healthcare, education, and opportunities, right? Political education, in politics, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one?
Workforce and economic participation.
I was reading something earlier. You did a bit of trying to prepare for this discussion, and I was asking you to repeat it so that I don't, get ahead of myself. But we are just a few weeks away from going to the polls, and we're seeing a lot transpire now. When we come back from the break, I'll be mindful to follow your lead. It won't be a salsa, but I certainly will hear a beat in my head as I think about, that enigma, my sweet enigma as I refer to it. But at the end of the day, when we come back, maybe you can share with us so that we appreciate that as much that we can do collectively. But let's ask, is there anything that on the individual level that we can and should be doing as we look at the sort of the global perspective? So Ms. Maher, can we maybe continue the discussion after the break?
Absolutely. Sounds wonderful.
Perfect. All right. Stay tuned. Rejoin us. And then who knows, you may not only become informed, empowered, and engaged, but you might actually find that there's much that we can and should be doing. And you might even be surprised. There's a lot more that you are, doing that you don't realize. Or worse yet, we're not doing enough so we can step up. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Now you'll never have to choose between 2 desserts at Subway. The new caramel brownie cookie is 2 treats in 1. Imagine sweet, gooey caramel with decadent chocolate chunks baked in brownie-flavored dough and topped with a light drizzle of caramel icing. And you have the new caramel brownie cookie, available at Subway. Complete your Subway sandwich, pizza, or salad with the delicious caramel brownie cookie or any other cookie flavor and dessert. Available at all Subway locations. Subway, eat fresh.
Yes. Spring is in the air, and Easter is also around the corner. So too is Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy located in Countryside Shopping Village. Stocked with Easter gifts and treats and new spring apparel. Remember, they're always just around the corner, with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Get all of your Easter purchases at Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village. Make your life easy. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy. Wholesome values with modern conveniences.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. Are you aware of the performance of your pension plan? The Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan provides quarterly fund fact sheets for our members to stay informed with the plan's performance. For the year ended August 31st, various life cycle funds provided returns between 9.2% and 16.5%, and our all-in expense ratio is currently the lowest it's ever been, a record low at 0.72%. Visit chamberpension.ky to review our fund fact sheets. You can see the performance as far back as 10 years. Remember that pensions are a longer-term investment strategy. Focus on the long term rather than the short-term returns. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan continues to perform for you.
Pastors Garrett and Joseph Haylock and the congregations of the Church of God at Breakers and West Bay would like to invite you to revival services in Breakers from Wednesday, March 31st to Thursday, April 1st at 7:30 p.m. On April 2nd, join us for our Good Friday all-day fellowship. Morning service will begin at 10:30, afternoon service at 2 o'clock, and evangelistic service will begin at 5. Lunch will be served after the morning service. For transportation, call 916-1345, 916-6367, or 923-1401. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28.
The Ministry of Education provides funding to assist Caymanian children who turn 3 years old before September the 1st to attend an early childhood centre. This funding is available through the Early Childhood Assistance Programme, ECAP. Parents and guardians are now invited to submit ECAP applications for the upcoming 2021 to 2022 academic year. Application forms are available at the Government Administration Building, early childhood centres across the island, or online from the Ministry's website at www.education.gov.ky. For further information, please call the Early Childhood Unit at 244-3155. Completed application forms may be emailed to ecap@gov.ky, that's ECAP@gov.ky, or delivered to the Government Administration Building.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thanks so much for joining us from the Family Resource Center Program Coordinator. Ms. Meher Landa joins us. So here, thanks so much, man. As you were sharing with us, you know, when we think of trying to make equal unfettered access for all, what are some of the initial challenges when we look at those 4 areas that we may be facing as a society?
I think one of the biggest things is when we talk about gender equality, we think, well, you know, the workforce needs to do better, this person needs to do better, and I think one of them just comes. The biggest thing that we can do is how can we challenge ourselves, reflect on our own behavior is really what comes to me first. How do we talk to people? How do we interact with people? And one of the things that the Family Resource Center has done is we participated in an unconscious bias training last week with Gender Equality Cayman, and that was a workshop that really spoke to what are your biases that you might not realize that you have when you're interacting with people, not just on gender, but on a whole range of criteria, and what does that look like and how does it play out in the things that you do. So I think the biggest thing that we can do is reflect on our own behavior, reflect on our own actions and biases that we have, and then we take that with us as we work through some of the other challenges that we have. So if we are all participating in society in some way, so whether that be in our workplaces, in education, in whatever setting it is, we come in with our own biases, our own perspectives. And so if we can challenge ourselves, I think we can start by making that space a better space and a more inclusive space.
You know, we hear words like inclusion, whether it's in school, whether we hear about, you know, making people feel a part of everything and inclusiveness. Is it that we've used it so much now with respect to those important things that have become cliches? Are we at risk of that happening?
I think there is a risk at people not, you know, we don't necessarily understand what we say when we say the word inclusion. And so when we talk about inclusion, what that also means is not just, you know, we are including that person, but how does that person feel about it? So it's not just our perspective, but a lot of it is the intention that we have, but also what we're getting back from that. So if we think we are including someone, but we're making jokes at their expense while they're at that table, that's not necessarily inclusion, because you're not making that person feel like they belong at that table, like they should be there. Right? So if you are at a workplace and you've got, you know, women and men at the workplace, but you're making fun of a gender or making fun of a person, they might not feel the inclusion. And same with the classroom. If you're in a classroom and you've got, you know, students from diverse backgrounds, students of different ages, students of different abilities, and that they're all in a classroom together, does the student feel included, or are they just a part of the classroom so that you can check a box?
Is it then, when we think about it, I mean, sometimes there are people who at the table, for instance, you're maybe amongst friends, probably, hopefully, we're not doing it with new acquaintances, and we're making in our minds jokes, We don't think they're offensive. The people there seem are laughing. But what can we do to make sure that we're a little bit more conscious, cognizant, and respectful, that perhaps it's not as funny as we may intend, and the way it's being received is just politely smiling without appreciating that there may be undercurrents. And then with that, should we also be conscious that those present may be okay with it, but those at the table next to us or passing by may be somewhat offended by it? Should we account for them as well?
Absolutely. I think you hit a really good point there. You don't know everyone's story that's in the room.
Right.
So even if you're making fun of someone and they're okay with it, maybe someone else around the table relates to what you said and now thinks that they're, being targeted in a specific way also. And I think we can take a lot from people's body language.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that we don't spend enough time talking about is empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And empathy is the ability to understand how someone else is feeling. And what makes empathy really hard is that you have to relate to that feeling, to have empathy for somebody. Maybe not because of the same situation, but because you have also felt that way, maybe for a different reason at some point in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can have more empathy for people, we can get to a place where there is more equality.
When we then think about the notion that even if we were to focus on those 4 areas, and I'm inclined to take 1 or 2 specifically, but maybe I will, depending on where we go. Is it that it's for the government, whatever that is, the public policy initiatives? Is it for the civil society? Is it for the individual to champion those things? And without it being all and sundry at different levels of sort of contribution, but who, if any, should take the lead on ensuring that this thing, isn't just an initiative that is actually, par for the course? It just should be because it's what is the right and correct thing to do.
Yeah, I think all of the categories that you just mentioned are relevant categories in this sector, and who should take the lead is really dependent on the situation and the, where it's coming from. If you as an individual have identified a barrier towards equality in any of those 4 sectors, if you have identified something, you can be challenged as part of the Choose to Challenge theme to challenge that bias, to challenge that barrier, and bring that forth. And sometimes that requires legislative change, sometimes that requires policy change, sometimes that requires, maybe in your own workforce, maybe that requires you to have a conversation with HR or your supervisor, or when you're, at the doc, maybe with healthcare, maybe that requires you to have a conversation with your medical practitioner. But if there is a barrier to, and not just a barrier that you are experiencing, but a barrier that you see, and I think that's really where it comes to with something like gender equality. It's not just, a woman's issue to handle, to fix gender equality, but it's also, as a community, for us to stand up for one another and be a voice for one another when we can't all necessarily do that.
Is it then, as the last part you said, that, we all can't do that, so it's not about an equal contribution from all and sundry. It may vary, so it may be an NGO or some government agency or some other aspect of civil society, as well as maybe a political champion or some other sort of means to drive the agenda to ensure that there's equal non-federal access, that there's a healthy respect and a promotion, but equal a celebration, that we need to have this sort of equalness across the board.
Absolutely, and I think, we spend a lot of time talking about empowering one another, and that really comes with our theme every year. We do, for example, our International Women's Day brunch, and a lot of that, what we talk about there, is about even women empowering other women. There are women who, women and men who might be in positions of leadership or positions, whether it be in your work life, your family life, your political life, there are people in positions of leadership who can then help to empower people who might not have the same opportunities. And the biggest thing that I would say there is our entire month this year has focused on our Young Parents program, and it has been to raise money to help support our young parents. So at the Family Resource Center, we have a program that supports parents between the ages of 13 and 25, and we provide supports in parenting skills. We remove barriers such as childcare, transportation, help them meet basic needs, and help provide them with employability skills so that they can gain employment and achieve success and feel success for themselves and for their children and their families.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really where it comes back to. We want to be able to choose to challenge everybody in our society to help a group that is vulnerable, to help a group that may not always feel empowered, because we have the opportunity to do that, and we have the opportunity to support.
Right. So, Meher, when we come back from this last break of our segment, maybe we can revisit that and talk more about the need for all of us to draw alongside, sometimes to lead, sometimes to, really be that supporting cast, and then appreciate perhaps the context and the space we're in. A couple of things I may want to ask you. Let's see how it goes. As we wrap up our discussion when we come back, that'll be cool.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Perfect. Please stay tuned. Listen to wonderful ads from our sponsors, and then when we come back, we join the conversation.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
We are in an age of exponential change. The world is experiencing a technology boom where innovation is at an all-time high. What does this mean for small island nations? How can we adapt to the emerging digital revolution? Join 900 delegates from 3 Caribbean countries at one regional event to tackle the theme, Global Digital Disruption, Threat or Opportunity. The virtual RF Economic Outlook Conference happens on May 6th. Register today at rfeoc.com.
Healthcare Pharmacy, caring about your health for the past 25 years. Radio Cayman's premier health show.
Alzheimer's and dementia, are they the same disorder?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question.
For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
For the Health of It with Tara Bush.
Is heard on Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. and on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Brought to you by Healthcare Pharmacy in Grand Harbor, where they care about your health. Transfer and refill your prescription online. Visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or call 947-8900. Healthcare Pharmacy, now with a new and second location in Governor's Square. The new Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor's Square is open Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Healthcare Pharmacy, where they care about your health.
Are you one of the pensioners on island at risk of having their monthly payments stopped? The Public Service Pension Board would like to remind its pensioners that their annual pension continuation certificates, PCCCs, have been distributed through the mail. To ensure continuity of benefits, please return your PCCC by March 31st. If you have not received your PCCC form, please feel free to drop by the PSPB office located on the first floor of the Government Administration Building to address this matter. If you are a shut-in or have care or control over a pensioner who is unable to be transported to the PSPB office, please call 945-8175 or 244-7123 for special assistance.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And as we continue the partnership with the Family Resource Center, it's not only about being encouraged or providing a safe, nurturing environment or feeling empowered, and hopefully that does not become a cliche, but, Billy Cunningham's words, must be doing something right. But let it apply to the things we do, whether in our relations or whether in our actions publicly. Ms. Mahira, thanks so much for being online with us and help us to appreciate that it shouldn't just be Honoring Women Month. It should be honoring all of us all the time, every day, all day long, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, truly is a pleasure, and I think sometimes we realize how much we learn if we would listen, how much we can do if we would just act in concert with a sense of, positive, genuine, truly sincere approach to doing the very best that we can do. With that, though, we were talking about, the young parenting program, and without trying to, belabor the subject, and certainly without impinging on people's sensibilities. But sometimes are we in this, on this vein, are we sort of not ensuring that our young men, are equally held accountable and responsible, provided the tools, and given that they may be more inclined to gain employment if they want, they don't have the child in tow. What are we doing to make sure that they understand that they have an equal and corresponding responsibility, if not more so at times?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the conversation, that's definitely part of the conversation about gender equality. And at all of our events where our director, Ms. Judith Seymour, she spoke about the role that men have to play as part of the conversation, and also the progress that we've been making with men being more active in our services, men attending our Honoring Women Month events in support, men, taking on roles in their own family lives. And that is something that we want to continue to stress the conversation about, because as part of gender equality, it's also part of, giving men opportunities to participate in their family life. Because, when we're not in a gender equal world, the onus is for women to be. We have this wonderful poem that we read during our domestic violence training that we do a few times a year, and it speaks to the burden on men and women when we are not in a gender equal world. The burden on women to, be in the home setting or take more responsibility in the home setting and possibly go to work, whereas it doesn't give the opportunity for men to have participation in their family life and build that bond and that relationship with their children, which is also, a benefit. It's something that men want to be a part of, and they aren't always given that opportunity. And so the conversation is really about the family. It's about, as people, our participation in home life, work life, economic life, and political life.
Right. And as I listen to you, I'm wondering sometimes too whether we don't, sort of inadvertently fail to appreciate that our practices. And I say this again, not just with absolute respect, but perhaps an appreciation that maybe I'm not as sensitive or as informed as I should. But take, for instance, way back when we would have a bridal shower or a baby shower. All right? Gladly that practice is changing where, both partners are present. At one time it was just the mother, the baby shower, or the maternity leave. We're seeing this family leave and the like. We're seeing, was it Australia the other day, only the second country in the world to sort of extend the time and the whole notion, and to include those who've had miscarriages, for instance, that this is a loss as well. So as we look at those things and some of the cliches that we have seen, happy wife, happy life, challenging even those notions and those almost accepted norms, could go a long way.
Absolutely, I completely agree. I think we have these things that we continue to say, or we have these notions about what roles are, and sometimes we don't even think of them as gender roles. But you're right. When for example, in the conversation about miscarriages, you always assume that the mother is struggling or the mother requires support, but the father also has experienced a loss. The family in that conversation has experienced a loss, and when we have conversations about gender equal world, gender balanced world, it's not a conversation just about providing support to women, although that is a large part of the conversation because of the inequality that has been there, and the rights that have not always, the rights that have had to be fought for that have not come naturally. But in the same breath, we want it to be a gender balanced world where the opportunities then become, it's not about, when we talk about gender equality, the definition of gender equality is not that men and women have the same lives and do the exact same things. It's about the opportunity for both genders to be able to participate in life.
So in a sense, then, it's equal pay for the individual because they're equally qualified and experienced and the like, not because, you're a male, you should be paid more. Can I flip that then and then ask that we will look at, say the CEO of the company, and let's say he's about to retire, just because his son, if you just allow me to focus on the male, just because it's his son, it doesn't automatically mean that that son should be elevated to that position because the father now is stepping aside. Should be accessible. Would it be the same then in the political landscape, that we see a need for more representation across the board for women? But are we well, I'm gathering that we're not saying that just because it's a woman, just like because it's the son of the CEO or it's the person who is the same nationality as the country, just because it's that person, if they don't have the skill set, the experience, the expertise, the ethos, they shouldn't be elevated just because they are, male, female, or the son of the CEO, or so on. Is that what we're sharing to ensure that that's the equal treatment and the equality that we're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the equality is there, but I think that's also where we come back a little bit to the conversation about inclusion and who's included in that room. Are they feeling included, but are they included based on, what is the criteria that got them there, really? And I think a lot of that has to do with, are they just the right person for the job, regardless of other criteria that's come into place, and that's where some of our biases come in.
Right. Unconscious bias even, huh?
People.
Yeah, that unconscious bias. And as I listen to it, I think that's where we may have failed in the past to appreciate that, whether it was deliberate or inadvertent. We may have excluded people from even, being invited to the room, much less being able to take a seat at the table because of that deliberate or unconscious bias. So with that in mind, how do we then, in this context, in this society, move forward that our sons and our daughters, our wives and our mothers are able to understand that there is equal unfettered access, irrespective of their age, ethnicity, their gender, their economics, and the like?
I think the first thing that I would suggest is understanding what we have in our society. We are, privileged to have organizations that deliver services, that advocate on behalf of issues relating to gender, issues relating to equality. And so I think we, the first thing that we can do is, we didn't spend as much time talking today about, domestic violence, for example, or other, vulnerable groups. So I think we can all get involved in a conversation by supporting those vulnerable groups, empowering those vulnerable groups in whatever way that we can. It doesn't always have to be a monetary way.
Right.
And I think that's one way that we can all challenge one another. And so whether that has to do with supporting the Young Parents Program, and we are very grateful for all of our sponsors and supporters that we've had this month, who've been able to, so that we've been able to raise money to remove those barriers and really empower that group. And I think coming back from an individual basis, it goes to finding out, what's going on. How do I treat people, and what are my biases against people? And it's not just gender bias, but maybe it's an age bias. Do we think specific things about, older people, younger people? And so as we continue to talk about, honoring women throughout the year, it also comes to recognizing the other things that make us who we are, and that's where we talk about intersectionality. We're not just a gender, we're not just a race, a nationality, an age, but we are all of those things combined.
Yeah.
And with that, I think also comes with part of the true challenge is that we celebrate our achievements, we celebrate all that we've done. And so, a lot of our events this year have been around celebrating the accomplishments that women have made in work life, family life, all of that throughout the year, throughout their lifetimes, and we've really been celebrating them as part of our conversation, and then using that to learn from them. We can learn from people who have been able to move up into executive positions or move up in, have successful family lives and things like that.
Strike that balance. And as you shared, I'm thinking, as talking about the Young Parents programs, we sort of end our discussion. there is seemingly a growing challenge for young mothers to gain meaningful employment, but perhaps too, as employers, that young father could be given levels of support and encouraged to attend the program, so that without fear of job loss, without being scorned by others, and more importantly, without a society looking at the man and say, "Oh, you've got 1,000 children, you must be a man," as opposed to saying you got one child and you're sacrificing so much to give the very best for that family. It's always encouraging, and certainly sometimes we feel the burdens, but listening to what you share. Closing thoughts as we wrap up our discussion, Ms. Mayer?
Yeah, I think in closing, I just want to I want to first thank you for having me on, letting us, always come on and talk about these challenges that we experience as a society. And I think in closing, I would challenge everybody to think about how in their life they can challenge themselves or challenge people in their environment to help us build a more equal world and a balanced world.
Mm-hmm. That is it, man. And that is better for all of us. It's a safer, healthier, more inclusive world. Hey, thank you very much. And to you and your team, and Ms. Judy in particular, as a director, you guys are doing great work, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So enjoy the rest of the week, and may the Easter.
Thank you as well.
All right. Thanks, man. I'm going to pause and take a break. DJ Lynn is on the other side of the board, and wow, it looks good, sounds good. Well, it's because of the team behind the scene. When you come back, more Talk Today.
Satisfaction is guaranteed 24 hours a day, whether it's music or information.
From Grand Cayman to Cayman Brac to Little Cayman, we've got you covered.
You ever hear a thing like that?
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have here on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Shanda Gallego from Radio Cayman's newsroom. Government reported the results of 808 COVID-19 tests on Monday. 12 came back positive, all travelers in isolation. So far, more than 47,000 vaccines have been administered locally. Turning to international news now, the German cities of Berlin and Munich have halted use of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine in people below the age of 60 because of reports of blood clots. German national and state health officials are to discuss the issue on Tuesday after further cases of a type of rare clot came to light. Canada has also suspended use of the AstraZeneca jab in people under 55. AstraZeneca said international regulators have found the benefits of its jab outweighed risks significantly. Witness testimony will continue in the trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who's charged in the death of George Floyd. Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, died in May 2020 after Chauvin placed his knee on Floyd's neck while he pleaded, "I can't breathe." His final moments, recorded on video, led to widespread protests against police brutality and racism, as well as incidents of unrest. And Nike is suing Brooklyn art collective Mischief over a controversial pair of Satan shoes that contain a drop of real human blood in the soles. The trainers, valued at $1,018, which feature an inverted cross, a pentagram, and the words Luke 10:18, were made using modified Nike Air Max 97s. Mischief released 666 pairs of the shoes on Monday in collaboration with rapper Lil Nas X, and says they sold out in less than a minute. Nike claims trademark infringement. The black and red shoes were dropped by Mischief on Monday, coinciding with the launch of the artist's latest song, Montero, Call Me By Your Name, which made its debut on YouTube last Friday. Those are your latest headlines here on Radio Cayman. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky. The Ministry of Community Affairs cordially invites seniors aged 60 and over to the open house for the Older Persons Active Aging Center on Wednesday, 31st March from 12 noon to 3 p.m.
Located at 131 McClendon Drive behind Price Right in Georgetown, the Older Persons Active Aging Center will provide services run by the Needs Assessment Unit and the Department of Children and Family Services. OPAC visitors will also be able to access educational, cultural, and recreational activities. To learn more, contact us at 244-2424. That's 244-2424.
OPAC opens weekdays from Monday, 19th April, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Some days you dig deep, some days, you know what, you don't have to dig at all. The work is done for you. You just gotta look and see what's before you, embrace what awaits, and who knows, just who knows. In the studio, Mr. John Bothwell, Mr. James, Mr. James, I was thinking the other day, when we look at water, if we cross the T and dot the I, if we do it the other way, it might be an Ebanks. You never can tell.
You never can tell, that's true.
Pull that mic closer to you, sir, and for those who are listening, thank you for sharing. For those who recognize that there are times that we must embrace the colloquialisms, we must always appreciate the land in which we live, and we must always be gracious, grateful, and make an eternal contribution to improve the law amongst us. So, gentlemen, the Cayman Islands Civil Service Association, oftentimes, we who are members see the benefit. We who aren't members equally derive great benefit. To that, Mr. Bothwell, you, the executive, and all of the membership. You have to be given our public thanks, so appreciate it.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you very much, and thank you for having us on again here as always. We like to appreciate being on here. Appreciate this chance to talk about whatever issues are happening around the place. Obviously, there's always lots of stuff affecting our members, and so the Civil Service Association is a membership organization. We're nothing without the members. We're all about the members, such as yourself. It's working for them, and what we'd like to talk about today a little bit is making them work for themselves, actually. We have our annual general meetings coming up at the end of this month, and we want to encourage all of our members to take part in them. It is their primary formal chance to affect the direction of the association, both to come out and talk about what's happening and what they think should be happening for the year coming, but also for them to step up or nominate some of their own people to step somebody else up if you need to, to make sure that things do get done. So it's the end of this month, the 29th here in Grand Cayman, the 30th in Cayman Brac. We'll be advertising them out, but we just wanted to give our members a heads up that the general meetings are coming, and we really want people to step up and get some things done in 2021 and 2022.
So I just want to make sure end of this month.
Yes.
March.
So, end of this month. Yeah, I'm already out of March. I'm gone.
I know what you say.
April, yes.
I know.
But thank you. I do it all the time. Thank you.
See, no, I can do that with you because you are always a gracious gentleman. But you said something, time for us to step up and step up. We know many hands make light work. We understand that. Economics talk about the free rider. People who sit by and enjoy the trappings of what comes, but who are not prepared to make that contribution. And too many times it's become a cliche. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teaching the fish, feed him for life. This is what we're talking about, becoming empowered, becoming that individual that's willing to step up, stand in the gap, and help, hold the rope. Sometimes, tow the boat. Other times, you just stir the pot.
Exactly.
In a good way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're all in it. We are all in this together. We are all in this together. All the civil servants, all the members of the association, and so the work that people do for others, for others, reflects back onto themselves.
Yes.
I'm sure James can. James has been doing this for a long time for a lot of other people. Because before we came in here, we were talking about back when he was a teacher, kind of thing. So. Civil servants, by the nature of the people involved, are very community-minded and giving people. They're always doing stuff for other people. This Civil Service Association recognizes and applauds that. And some of the things that we do is then try to give back to them. But it also does give our members a chance to keep acting out that love of other ethos, love of country.
That's it. That's the ethos that we should inculcate in all of us, I love music. What is it? Shakespeare thought, if music be the food of love, play on. We hear oftentimes that the enemy is gifted at, musical lyrics and the like. The thing is that in a community, and I am blessed to have grown up in a household where almost all sorts of music were played. Sometimes not with the parents' consent, but it was played nonetheless. And I had a strong appreciation for country music because of the lyrics, right? And I can take a song and understand that it is crafted in a certain way for a particular setting. The singer is talking about a newfound love and appreciation for that old flame. And as I listened earlier, must be doing something right, keeps resonating. Exactly. We can take that in the context of what it is, but we can even take it in the global context. If you're in a membership of an organization, if you are part of the parliamentary process, if you are part of the sports and you're giving it, if you're the coach, if you're doing something right, then that's going to translate into something right being done. And this is where we are. The safety, security, and the power in the numbers, but also the prospect of having a greater resource in which to draw more ideas, more opportunities to improve the lot. But it's so easy to sit on the sideline and not say anything, not do anything.
Yeah, I absolutely it is. We'd all like to just not be involved sometimes, but when you're not involved, things are done to you. This Cayman Islands Civil Service Association is about things being done for you, sometimes by you. So we do need people, we do need members to keep coming out and being a part of it. So come out to the annual general meetings end of next month, April 29th and 30th, and see how you can be a part of it. James, you've been with the association for many years. What is some of the stuff that you've seen coming straight from members that the association has then been able to push through for other members?
Oh, there have been a number of things that our members have.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, a number of things that our members have pushed through.
I take it off the headset. See, pretend that's a politician on a good naskin. You wear a headset, Mr. James, more, but it's
it's echoing a lot.
Yeah, we'll fix it after break. Take it off. Don't worry about it. You keep your hair in place. It's okay, man. You take it off.
We've done quite a lot of things from the time I joined, which was I joined in 1976. Back in 1976, and there were a number of issues that were coming forward. Persons felt disenfranchised and so forth. And the president, which was Mr. Gilbert McLean, worked through the various avenues to try and bring notice to these issues and some of the concerns that our members had. And so all along as we move on through those years up to today, we're working in the same light. And we're not working against anyone, we're working with our employers, and of course ensuring that equity and fairness takes place within the civil service and that members are able to access the things that they need to access through the right channels. And so we're not out there just taking the sides of our membership. We look at what is happening, and when our members are walking the wrong road, we let them know that. So it's not that we just jumping on board and taking things to management or whatever and saying this is wrong and that's wrong. No, we weigh the evidence, look at where it's coming from and what's happening, and then we take it from there. That's the remit that we have, is working so that it will be a more equitable system.
Fairness.
And fairness within the service. That is our aim.
Many times too, we see the notion of collective bargaining, why people may call for trade unions and like good, bad, or indifferent, whatever your kind of perspective is. But it's not, as you said, ethos isn't about taking an adversarial approach. It's about fairness. It's about making sure that there's a balance. And sometimes, the upper hand, because of the strength of the economic strength, can offer great leverage. But then equally, if you have sufficient numbers, you think your army maybe might. But we've seen that not always to be the case in history, right?
No, but you're absolutely right. It is about fairness. It is about numbers, because from the great numbers of members in the Civil Service Association, we can get all the good ideas coming out and people flagging up where they're starting to see issues and things, and looking at it from a fairness perspective, but also a long-term perspective as well. And that is one of the big differences between the civil service, a civil service association, and some other, economic institutions and things like that, and groups. Is we do have to look long term. We look at members who come in, join the civil service, from scholarship, work straight through to retirement, and we represent those members at every stage of their life. And so we will keep talking about things like retirement age and pension effects that's going to have, because obviously that's a big issue for our members and will be in 2021, 22, as well as, of course, as health insurance.
Yes.
Again, a very big issue. In the civil service, we're very fortunate. We know that we have really good health insurance, and the pension is pretty good too. At least it's better than the private sector. So the civil service
must be doing something right.
Must be doing something right. I mean,
Yes.
sorry. And so, for example, the Civil Service Association has a representative on the Public Service Pension Board. Mr. James has been that rep for many years now, because the Civil Service Association is the way that civil servants can keep their voice on things and keep their involvement in things, making sure everything is working for their benefit. And we see it working, but obviously the world keeps changing and we have to evolve with it. And that means having these repeated discussions and bringing new people, new civil service members into the association and new civil service association members onto the management council to make sure that fresh voices are applying fresh views to these perennial issues like health insurance or pension and retirement age, which are going to be 2021 issues as they are almost every year, because they're big problems. So again, we want to encourage all of our members to come out to the annual general meetings on the 29th and the 30th to be part of these discussions and the solutions and making sure that your interests are well represented by the best people you can find, such as yourself.
When we come back from the break, right, let's talk more about getting participation on the BRAC on the Grand Cayman and the importance of it. As you were speaking, I'm thinking there are a couple of things that we should be immediately drawn to. We need to adapt. We need to innovate. Right? So when we come back, how the Civil Service Association is helping this membership, but equally how we could be more effective if we have more inclusion, others come on board, get away from whatever may be perceived impediments to membership, whether it's the small monthly fee. I mean, less than a cup of coffee for one day, and you have the benefits of a large pool. Just a thought. Some of us, it takes a long time to get to the drinking fountain, right?
That's
but
true.
when we do, we never want to leave. So it's not a trough; it's a flowing river.
That's right.
When we come back, more talk today.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands.
Although very similar to their Grand Cayman counterparts, organized religion in the Sister Islands was spearheaded by the work of Baptist ministers as opposed to Presbyterian missionaries who started the churches nearly 40 years after that in Grand Cayman. In May of 1885, Reverend J.H. Sobey, minister of the Second Baptist Church of Montego Bay, visited Cayman Brac at the invitation of the Brac seamen. During his visit, Reverend Sobey held the first service in a large house, and it was so overcrowded that the following day a tent had to be erected to have the service. In 1886, Reverend Sobey returned to Cayman Brac with Secretary of the Jamaica Baptist Missionary Society, Reverend E.J. Hewitt, in order to introduce Reverend H.W. Rutty as the Brac missionary worker. Congregations started at various settlements with the construction of 2 chapels in Stake Bay and the Creek. The progress would continue, and 6 months later, Reverend Rutty was ordained as a permanent missionary, and more congregations were formed in Westin, Spot Bay on the east end of the island, and South Harbour in Little Cayman. Reverend Rutty's son and grandson would go on to become Cayman Brac's collector and Chief Justice of the Peace.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
On April 14th, you have the chance to make the right choice for West Bay South. I am Raoul Nicholson Coe, and I am ready and committed to serve the people of West Bay South. It's time for a new time, to create more and better opportunities for everyone, for better education, for better housing, for better employment opportunities and mental health programs that will benefit all Caymanians. On April 14th, vote for me, Raoul Nicholson Coe, your best choice for West Bay South. And let us work together for a better West Bay South and the wider Cayman Islands.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for joining us. In a quick preview, 1:30, we're expecting political candidate Miss Christina Hislop-Rollinson to join us. But no, always grateful to learn more about the Cayman Islands Civil Service Association, Mr. James Watler, Mr. John Bothwell. I wouldn't want to say that you guys are the face and the space and the name of the association, but thank you for stepping up and coming and facing, what is at times could be a daunting place in the studio. Probably akin to a room in Bellevue. I just can't.
No hot dogs outside. But thank you for having us. We do really appreciate the chance to come in, and although there's no view out, there is a voice out. And a voice back in. So we do appreciate that very much.
And there's a reflecting glass as well.
Yeah. But you're right. Both James and I have been working in the association for quite a while now, sort of constantly. But this is part of any association is the renewal. It's Easter. It's the renewal period, and end of April we're having our annual general meetings, and it's time for our members to say who do they want to be that face, that voice, those workers for the next year. For example, it will not be me as president next year because I am time barred from going any further. One of the things that we did a few years ago, and I was part of this so I can say it proudly, is we put in a term limit on almost all of our posts, depending on various ways it's interpreted, or it works. I shouldn't say interpreted. It's pretty clear how it works, but and so literally, even if I wanted the job, I couldn't be president again, and that's to make sure that we do have this constant renewal in the association. And so it's really vitally important that members come out to the annual general meetings and to participate, because you can't rely on the same people to keep doing it. Even if we were willing to, and most of us are, we just can't keep doing it for you. It has to be on the members to come out and take part and be a part of their association and keep it their association.
Right.
And new members coming on brings new ideas, and that's what we want, to get those ideas and blend them in with where we are, so we can move forward in a more positive and powerful way. That is the key to it. Rather than we have ideas, yes, as older members, but then what about all those ideas that you can bring to the table? And that's why we're inviting you out there as